morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We have a presentation by Tantalus Systems. Peter Londa, CEO, is here to give us a little bit of a brief update past Q3 results. And also with us, we have Andrew Mitchell, who's Director of Utility Solutions, who's going to give us a bit of a special demo on the TRUGrid Analytics platform. For those of you that aren't that familiar with it, I thought it would be an interesting addition. So the format will be Pete's going to give a quick summary, then Andrew's going to do the demo, and then we'll do Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box at the bottom. And as always, this presentation will contain forward-looking statements. If you'd like to know more about those, you can find them on the company's presentation on the website, which has been updated since the quarter, so feel free to check that out. And with that out of the way, I'd like to introduce Pete. Hi, Pete. How you doing?
Great, Deb. How are you doing?
I'm good. Maybe you could give us a little bit of an overview on the Q3 results.
Sure. Let me bring up the summary slides that are available on our website in our investor deck. Let me know if this comes across.
Looks
Able
good.
to see that, Deb? Great.
Yep.
So appreciate everybody dialing in and taking some time to get the update. We were very pleased last week to report the results through Q3 at $11.6 million on a year-over-year basis compared to Q3 of last year. Revenue was up 14%. In addition to the revenue profile, gross profit margins remained extremely strong at 56%, among the highest that we have reported. And even though we continue to invest in the commercialization of the TRUSense Gateway, we did post about $600,000 of positive adjusted EBITDA. As a reminder, we report in US dollars, and overall, we were pretty pleased with the results. On a trailing 12-month basis, something that we focus on quite a bit internally, solid and I'd say, gross profit margin for the quarter. You can see connected devices was solid. Software and services, solid gross profit margin. And in terms of contribution, we saw some highs. Software and services was 38% for the quarter. That's the highest it's ever been in terms of revenue contribution. And similarly, the recurring revenue that we recognized in Q3 at 29% of total revenue was the highest in our company's history. In terms of trailing 12 months, fairly solid, $42.1 million. It's down on a comparative basis. That ties a little bit to Q4 of 2022, which was the highest revenue quarter we've ever reported in our company's history. It tied to some pent-up demand and connected devices that were shipped after COVID-19 and then electronic components. So as we get past that Q4 2022 out of the trailing 12 months calculation, the numbers will invert here and the trailing 12 months would be positive. But overall, we're on sort of a run rate of 42 million from a trailing 12-month perspective. We continue to expect that number to increase. On a trailing 12-month basis, you'll see 54% gross profit margin and neutral EBITDA. It's actually slightly positive at $200,000. So we think the business is trending in the right way, Deb, from a financial perspective. And we ended the quarter, as folks will see, with over $10 million of cash on the balance sheet, in addition to having about $4.5 million available under our two debt facilities for additional working capital. So we think the balance sheet's in good position, and we think the company has adequate flexibility from a working capital perspective to prepare for the pivot point and the inflection point that we anticipate with the TRUSense Gateway. To that end, I'll come off the financial slides, but hopefully everyone also saw the exciting news late last week of us securing PTCRB certification for the cellular gateway. While it was very much anticipated and something we shared in our Q3 results, I'd say it marks the final certification for all of our TRUSense gateways that we have been highlighting and tracking for the past 9 to 12 months. And what it means is all 3 versions of the TRUSense gateway are available for sale. All 3 are now in production with our contract manufacturer, and we are excited to get those 3 devices, the 3 variations of the devices, fiber, Ethernet, and cellular, out to the 21 utilities that have placed initial orders for their field trials and their demonstrations. While we focus a lot on the TRUSense gateway, we also are making excellent progress on our data analytics, particularly with respect to transformer monitoring, which is a key element of the data that we are capturing from existing devices, as well as the power quality data that we will capture from the TRUSense gateway. And to give everyone some perspective on that before Andrew fires up the demonstration, when we think about the growth in electricity through data centers and as a result of electric vehicles, or the fact that we are all carrying multiple cell phones, Apple Watches, AirPods, and other devices that need to be charged every day, if not multiple times a day, right? That the growth of electricity for the first time in 50 years is increasing. That's putting strain on utilities as they struggle to create more generation of power. And so a big element of preparing for the growth in electric demand is modernizing the distribution grid, the actual delivery. And within that modernization, we are very focused on asset protection. As more power flows through the distribution grid, what impact does that have specifically on transformers, distribution transformers, and pole-mounted transformers? As a lot of those transformers are old and were deployed before the concept of an electric vehicle or before the implementation of rooftop solar or batteries inside the home. And so what we're doing is capturing data at the very edge of the grid. We are putting that data through some analytics, leveraging some machine learning, and we are helping utilities pinpoint where they have transformers that are at risk, that are not operating properly, that are not generating the return on investment that utilities expect. And so that's a big area of focus for us. We talk about modernizing the grid by harnessing the power of data. That data drives analytics. Analytics drives recurring revenue. And so everything is very much connected here. And so we're excited to shift our focus as we get through full commercialization of the TRUSense gateway and start talking about the analytics capabilities of this business as we access more data. So Deb, that's sort of update on financials in a nutshell. Obviously, the key drivers for the TRUSense gateway, which a number of people are tracking, and hopefully an explanation on the importance of the analytics that Andrew will walk us through.
Makes sense to me. Andrew, you want to take over?
Going for the share here, and let's see what happens. Let me know if you guys can see my screen okay.
Coming across, Andrew, you're good.
All right, great. Thanks, Pete, for the bit of background there. Good morning to everybody on the phone and on the web, if you will. But let me just add a little bit to what Pete was referencing when it comes to harnessing the power of the data that Tantalus brings to the market and our analytics. If you think back, utilities have always been reactive, and my 25 plus years in the industry, we've always looked at transformers on a month-to-month basis, a half a year basis, or a year basis. And as Pete, put it so well, that scenario is changing with the the demand for electricity, with battery walls, electric cars, solar generation. And so by taking all that data, we now can take transformers that are just a large can of metal, oil, and wire and turn those into smart devices using some machine learning and analytics, and presenting that data to a utility hour over hour and day over day to allow them to monitor those assets, 1 day trailing or 6 hours trailing, if you will, compared to the old way of doing it month over month and year over year. There's not that kind of time now to wait before a transformer can fail, or, as we like to call it, rapidly redeploy in the industry and leave oil on the ground or cause a pole fire if a solar or a battery or an EV is hooked up to that and it's not monitored in an hour by hour basis. So in an effort to solve that with our transformer analytics, what you're seeing here is just what we call our landing dashboard, our overview page. And so for our utilities that we're serving already, we can instantly get a feel for what's taking place, like I said, hour over hour, day over day in real time. So we can look at this and see how many transformers are what we call critically overloaded. How many are about ready to explode, overheat, cause an oil problem, cause a pole fire, and allow the utility to go and address those with some immediacy. The next one is overloaded. While they're not ready to, burn up or go into an outage mode just yet, they're on the cusp of being needed to be addressed very, very soon, which allow the utilities to look at that during normal business operations to save money so it doesn't occur after hours or on the weekend, and they can build it into their day-to-day operations. Next, what you're looking at is that what we call generating. They're seeing reverse power flow on that transformer. This is a twofold scenario. One, we want to protect the utility personnel from seeing that power flow back onto the grid and be able to identify everywhere that that's taking place. But also, we want to protect the public to be able to see power that's flowing back on the grid. If there is an outage somewhere, we're able to quickly identify that for our utilities to mark that in case of a downed power line or in case of a scenario where there's people or children out there. We can notify people very, very quickly that power is flowing in the reverse direction, and it might still be live to protect the public as well as the utility personnel. And then what we do is we take all those devices, our TruSense family and our power quality from our AMI product, and we call those power quality events. We now can start to look at what we call blinks or outages or sags or swells. And a sag is a low voltage and a swell is a high voltage. And how those come into play in the utility industry is think about a factory. If we decide to lower the voltage to save some money during peak pricing or during a high demand period, if we drop that voltage too low, potentially a large power customer could cause a factory production run to go offline, or reverse. If we go too high on the voltage, we can damage something inside a facility. So what we like to do is monitor each and every event coming from our devices and tie that to the specific transformer. That has a real life aspect on what it does to that transformer. Too many blinks, too many outages, too many sags, too many swells within a transformer can cause that asset to have a shortened period of lifespan and not get the return on investment that a utility is hoping for, which in most cases is 30 plus years on a transformer. So by taking all these power quality events, a utility can now watch this on a day-by-day, hour-by-hour basis and begin to protect those assets or upsize them or downsize them based on what they have available. If you look below, we have a little map. That's just the utility's footprint. You can see what we call the half moons, the blue and the whites. Those are our transformers that are seeing reverse power flow. So very, very quickly, a utility can identify what transformers are seeing power flowing in the reverse direction. The grid, as Pete mentioned, was never designed over the last 30 years to take the power flow back. It was always a one-way delivery. So engineers, utilities are having to get very creative on how they size transformers, because if someone puts too much solar or battery or an EV behind the wrong size transformer, you can quickly get yourself into a scenario where the transformer overheats or melts down or has to be replaced. So by watching that, using these analytics to be able to see what's happening every day, a utility can monitor what a consumer is putting back onto the grid and identify very quickly whether they need to change the size of a transformer and make it larger to be able to accept that reverse power flow. That's something that we never had to think about in the industry over the last 30 plus years of putting power back onto the grid. And then we quickly identify where orange is caution, if you will, a stoplight. The device is showing lots of hours of being in overload. Now, is that a problem? Maybe or maybe not, depending upon the weather and where this utility is located. If it's very cold like in the Northeast where Pete's at, and we're getting ready to have a blast of cold air. That cold allows utilities to run transformers, up to 50 to 75% over their nameplate rating for an extended period of time. It's for several hours to several days based on the cold. Vice versa, if I'm in the Mojave Desert and it's very, very hot, I don't want to push a transformer too far because it actually runs less in the hot weather and I get less time out of that transformer the closer I get to its nameplate rating. So it becomes a very eloquent balancing act for a utility to get the most out of their assets with the transformers and utilizing the data through our transformer analytics. We're able to help utilities do this in a very simplified fashion using a dashboard and the KPIs that you see in front of you. Moving on to the next piece, what I want to do is show you the next step. So we've shown you the critically overloaded, the overloaded, and those seeing reverse power flow. Well, from a utility perspective, the two other pieces that are very influential in the day-to-day operations and the cash flow collection are idle transformers. An idle transformer is one that's sitting in the field that has power to the transformer, and it might be on a large factory or it might be on a home, but it is not being utilized at all. There is no load behind that transformer. Now, the beauty of analytics is we can identify very, very quickly if that is supposed to be the case. So our software is based on a subscription model. So today, there are 47 transformers at this utility that don't have any load behind it. There's no load from a house. There's no load from a factory. And so therefore, we know which 47 transformers are sitting very quietly. Now, if this number changes from 47 to 48, the utility automatically can get an alarm. And what that does is it allows the utility, instead of waiting until the end of the month for revenue collection, there's components inside a transformer that can fail due to heat and due to age. And this allows a utility to monitor that and catch that day over day, hour over hour, and allows them to get out there in real time so that they don't lose revenue on this transformer. And it's done automatically. And so if you look, we show the utility, the size of the transformer. And just to give you a feel for those on the phone, a 10 is something you would find on a home, a small home. A 2000 is something you would find at a factory. So the gamut runs from 10 to 2000 or 2500 is what you would see. One of our customers unfortunately experienced 7 factories showed up on their idle transformers. And so we were able to identify that the very first morning of turning this on, and it turned out there were some components that had failed in the field, and they were losing thousands of dollars of revenue month over month, and we were able to identify that and help them recapture that and go collect that. So this is a very important piece that utilities are using our software for, instead of waiting until the end of the month for a high-low bill run to catch something that might have failed at the very beginning of the month. And then, as Pete mentioned, as we work our way and wind our way out of COVID, and I know it's been 3+ years, but we look at underloaded transformers, and the reason we do that is because the supply chain has become such a bottleneck in the utility industry when it comes to transformers and meters and poles and things of that nature that have snaked their way through over the last 3.5 years. And the one component now that is struggling the most to be had is transformers. So utilities are trying to do their best to efficiently and properly size transformers that they didn't have to do for the last 8 to 10 to 12 years before COVID. A utility could simply put up a certain size transformer, move on about their day, and whether they sized it perfectly or not wasn't as big of a deal as it is now. Now, utilities need to be spot on and size that correctly because there is such a price differential from the small transformer onto the next size, all the way up that chain from 10 to 2500. So this allows utilities to be able to look and say, okay, should I combine services? If you think about it, when you drive to work, or if you're out on a drive and you see a bunch of homes in a neighborhood, you'll have transformers, or what we call pedestals, out there where several homes, usually it's 4 homes, are connected to a transformer. Well, maybe I could add 2 more homes if those 4 homes on that initial transformer aren't being overloaded, maybe I can add 2 more and get away with 6 homes to 1 transformer instead of 4 homes to 1 transformer. So by looking at this underloaded area allows a utility to be much more efficient in their day-to-day designing of new developments and be much more steward of the utility's money on how they lay that out and how they design it. And then again, as Pete mentioned, from an asset management perspective, we take every transformer that's at the utility and we monitor those and we put those together in a group. We're starting to tie these to utility accounting inventory systems, CIS systems, so that utilities know that in this example, this utility has 6,200 of this size transformer out of their 15,000 transformer lot. That allows them to know how many they need to keep in spare, how many they need to keep for future growth, so on and so forth. And then we break that down by a usage factor. Without getting too deep into that, as all of you know, as we go across the country and you turn the news on and you see different things about storms, power outages, brownouts, blackouts, what we're trying to be able to do for the utility is to show them where their transformers are being utilized and what usage is available. And by doing this on a day-to-day basis, we begin to lay that foundation to be able to think and step forward and say, okay, during a constrained period, if there's going to be a brownout or a blackout, do we have space available to call on resources behind the meter using our transformer analytics? And so if you look over here to your left, we identify the loading on every single transformer throughout a utility. And so we're laying that foundation to be able to use the other parts and pieces of our product family, the TruSense gateways, or those devices that you put on your home, whether it be a battery wall, whether it be an EV, whatever the case may be. If we have the capability to know that we can share electricity, or the utility can borrow electricity, if you will, from one home, run it through a transformer and serve several homes during a constrained period, now we're able to set the utility up for success as we move forward, because we know what is on every single transformer and how we can move load around and help utilities as we think about it going forward. From there, we can get very specific into details, not to go too deep down the rabbit hole, but I was in charge at my former utility of about 600 commercial industrial customers. And so the opportunity to be able to look at a specific customer, if one called in, had a maintenance issue or something along those lines, I could simply put the transformer number in here, and I could look at that transformer and I could see where it's at on the map. I could see what's taking place. I could see how many hours of overload. I didn't pick the greatest transformer here. I just clicked on the map. We'll look at a different one here shortly. But it allows me to see everything that's taking place on that transformer and to be able to make decisions in immediacy without having to call the customer back or run some calculations or do different things. The button I wanted to hit was events. The one I mentioned to you earlier. It's very important if you think about the harsh weather that's working its way across North America right now. I want to know, as a former engineering supervisor at a utility, what has taken place on all of my transformers. Not that I want to ignore my my residential customers, but if you think about high dollar transformers and commercial and industrial, that is a large portion of financial success for a utility. I want to know what's taking place at these large transformers and the events that are occurring on them so that I can assess, send my crew out during normal operations, during normal time of business to save money at the utility and not wait for a catastrophic event. So by having all this information, I can very, very quickly, day over day, hour over hour, go back and look and see if I want to go address these large customers, to see here that I've had high voltages on some of these customers. And then very quickly, I can click on transformers as a, let's just say for talking purposes, if I'm the engineering manager at a utility and I want to know, do I have any issues? We've made it very simple in the Tantalus mantra: green is good, yellow, orange is marginal, and red needs your attention. So if I bring this screen up and I look here, I have some green, I see some transformers that have been overloaded, and I see the rating of a transformer, I can simply scroll the mouse down and still see that everything is green, and I can check the entire balance of my entire 15,000 transformers in a matter of moments. At that point in time, the utility has no worries today on whether or not any of the transformers are going to melt down, cause a pole fire, or anything of that nature based on our color coding and what AI has told us about all of these transformers in these conditions. If there were reds or yellows here, it would allow the utility to be able to very quickly look at it and say, I should probably send a technician out to take a peek at this before something catastrophic could or will happen at some point in time. The last piece of this software that we like to sort of tout for utilities, there are a plethora of softwares at utilities, whether it's a billing system, it's an outage system, it's a prepay system, it's a mapping system. There are so many different systems at a utility. What we like to do is use our analytics and our auditing effort to be able to help utilities find all the errors amongst all their different softwares. And simply using a little bit of AI and using color coding to keep things simple, you don't have to have an engineering degree or an electric background to understand what is taking place. And so what we do is we color code based on the areas in the circuit, and we can quickly tell a utility what's taking place and what they're missing. So if I scroll down just a little bit, of the 15,000 transformers at this utility, there are some pieces of information that are missing. And so this allows the utility to window down or window in and simply click on each one of these to see this one's missing a phase. Somewhere in one of those 6 software systems, this software, it's missing what we call phase, whether that's A, B, or C. And that becomes important later. But what happens is if that is missing in another piece of software and there's a major outage, it could mispredict an outage, send the crew to the wrong spot, cause the utility to waste a lot of money and things of that nature. And so what we do is we help become a system of record and help sort those out very quickly. Again, you can see someone forgot to put phase somewhere in one of the systems at this utility. And so by simply looking at the colors that are dotted on the map, they don't have to figure out, where the problem is at. We've identified what the problem is. Now they simply have to go back in, find their record, find where it's missing, repopulate it, and very quickly come over here to the side and do a new upload or download either direction. And it keeps the integrity of the utility running much cleaner, much more efficient, ultimately saving the utility money as we move forward. So with that, just kind of wanted to whet your appetite as to what we're trying to do with utilities. Those are the major tabs that we have information on. And just wanted to make it a quick snapshot. That's what we're doing with all the data that we're collecting and trying to help utilities streamline their operations and pull things in from a reactionary perspective back to a proactive day by day, hour by hour stance to help utilities move forward in this ever-changing world. With that, I'll turn it back over to Pete and Deborah and open up for questions as we move forward.
Andrew, thanks. There was a question from Nick Boychuk in the chat that we've addressed. It related to some questions around the number of utilities that have activated the transformer analytics or have shown interest, as well as whether we've leveraged an advisory committee. And we do have an advisory committee that's helping us on all of our analytics capabilities. Similarly, question in terms of, Andrew, the response that we're seeing from utilities, where they see value and where do we think there's growth, either whether that's regional or type of utility?
Well, two of the biggest things we've done or that we've heard from utilities is to automate the process and simply, like I showed earlier, where if something changes a number of 47 idle transformers to the 48th one, utility personnel do not have to sit in front of our software. We will automatically alert the appropriate personnel within the utility and send them a directed alert when that situation occurs. That's the biggest thing we've heard first. As I travel and traverse the country back and forth, there's been a lot of retiring done in the utility industry, and there's a lot of employee shortages at the utility industry across North America. And so one of the things is we're trying to make this so that someone who has very little utility experience can sit down, understand, be able to look at things in a color-coded fashion, train young people that want to come in with absolutely no background in the industry, and make them a very beneficial piece of the utility from hour one, simply looking at this. So that was the first thing we were told. And then the next piece that's really played a significant role, again, I hate to go back to the idle piece, but utilities normally run a billing once a month, and then they do what they call a high-low sanity check. And oftentimes it doesn't make it from billing to the operations folks, that there could be an issue for days or weeks afterwards. So you could ultimately fall behind 2 to 2.5 months before you realize there's an issue at a large customer or a group of customers on collecting revenue. And so utilities are very intrigued in the idle aspect of being able to see when a transformer is no longer, or the meter behind it is no longer seeing that load on a transformer, whether it's due to a billing issue internally, due to staff that has turned over, or due to parts that have failed in the field, that oftentimes, like I mentioned, will go months until they're addressed. And so they're really identifying that cash flow aspect and being able to identify that. So to keep meter to cash functions up to snuff on a day-by-day, hour-by-hour basis has really helped drive this product.
Yeah, and I'd say we are seeing interest across the United States. I don't think there's any one region of the U.S. where this is more applicable than others. And I'd say similarly, in terms of the number of utilities that have started to activate or are trialing this, it's a mix of public power and electric cooperative utilities. I think it's typically the larger utilities that are within our user community that are starting to access this capability. But as we've rolled this out and as we've gathered feedback from our advisory committee, to Andrew's point, being able to send automated alarms out to specific individuals within a utility is helping simplify the use of the tool and the value that utilities are receiving. Andrew, I was trying to think off the top of my head the number of utilities that have activated the Transformer Analytics and are either trialing or have purchased. I know it's the number's over 20 utilities so far, but I don't know. Do you have a closer number?
I wanted to say we're at 22 with more in the pipeline to be installed with our new customers that we've added. And so we have some in the pipeline that are to be turned on. But I think they're 6 to 8 weeks out as we spool those customers up.
Yeah, all of those utilities are activating this in a SaaS model, which is new for Tantalus to offer in that capacity. But that's the only way we are making the analytics capabilities available. And it'll be something that as we have some case studies like Andrew walked you through Northeastern on identifying a number of transformers that were not installed properly and configured in the system properly that led to no billing and a loss of tens of thousands of dollars of revenue to the utility. We'll use those case studies at our upcoming users conference in April of 2025 to market this capability to a wider set of our user community.
How many of the utilities that are using this product are also employing TRUSense?
I'm sorry, Deb, I didn't quite catch the question.
Oh, sorry. I was saying how many of the utilities using this product right now also have submitted orders for TRUSense?
I believe it's 10 or 12 that have purchased the TRUSense devices, either already have this or have it on their budgeted planned for 2025. So the beauty of the TruSense device is that we can capture and strategically place any one of the TruSense devices behind a transformer, whether it's our AMI offering or not, and utilize that information behind that transformer and start to populate the analytics in a very strategic fashion, a very surgical fashion. So it doesn't have to be a full Tantalus AMI deployment to be able to utilize this software with our TruSense family of products.
Interesting.
Just to make sure that translation is clear, our existing edge devices tied to our advanced metering capabilities for utilities, the data from those devices is adequate to populate and leverage the transformer analytics. So this capability is applicable to all utilities that we support today. Where the TruSense Gateway comes into play is for utilities that may already have an alternative AMI system, but are deploying the TruSense Gateway strategically in support of load management and behind the meter control or for power quality measurement. With the TruSense Gateway going into those accounts, the transformer analytics can also be pulled into those accounts based on the data that we collect. So it's not dependent on having our entire platform and system. It's a nice ability for us to generate revenue from utilities that may otherwise have not chosen us for the actual physical devices deployed in the field.
Got it. I don't see any other audience questions. If people have questions, feel free to submit them. Anything else that you guys wanted to discuss today?
No, Deb, I'd say I appreciate everybody dialing in and thanks for hosting. It's an exciting time as we activate the TruSense Gateway and start to see traction, not only with advisory committee members, but the identified accounts that we've been talking about in terms of aggregate opportunity. And when you sort of connect the two, the devices, TruSense Gateway or our edge computing module with analytics, right? That's really where the power of data comes into play for utilities. And so it's the combination of these capabilities, both the physical device, the data from that device, and then what we do with that data that I think is really helping us differentiate ourselves in the market and driving recurring revenue for sure on behalf of our shareholders. So I think that's all we want to try to cover today, unless there are any other questions.
In terms of upcoming catalysts, what can investors be watching for in terms of news flow?
Deb, I'd say, I think we're looking to close out the year strongly, certainly with respect to the record level of orders that we've witnessed so far and that we shared through September. I'd say that trend continues favorably for us. So we'll look forward to providing updates as we get into 2025 on aggregate orders, as well as number of utilities added to our user community. And then incremental to that, the expansion of the number of utilities that are placing orders for the TruSense Gateway. So I think those are some small important but specific metrics that we'll continue to report on. I'd say other major efforts is certainly going from initial orders of the TruSense Gateway to full deployments, similar to what we've seen with Bolivar, the city of Bolivar. So I think as we have major opportunities and commitments by utilities for full deployments of the TruSense Gateway, we will announce that. As we make more progress with Transformer Analytics, you'll see use cases, case studies, and traction with that tool as well. I think those are some key items from a adoption and certainly from a financial perspective.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Andrew, for taking the time to walk us through the demo. And Pete, thanks for your time for providing an update. If anyone has any additional questions, would like a one-on-one, please feel free to reach out. And I hope everyone has a good afternoon.
Right. Deb, thanks so much. Andrew, well done.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Have a nice afternoon.